Hi, I'm Aimee. I'm a parent to a child with special needs and disabilities and two neurotypical children. I'm a blogger and also a mentor to other parents of children with special needs and disabilities. And my family, our needs, have asked me to share some of the work that I do around emotional resilience. So for the past 4 years, I've been running workshops for other parents just like me to help build a community of parents who work really hard on advocacy and self-care. So my oldest son, Freddie, is 9 years old and he has a de novo genetic condition and had a stroke before birth, and that has resulted in him having a severe learning disability, lots of physical disabilities too, and difficulties and really challenges in every area of his development. So it's been a long old stretch and he's only 9 and I know we have a long way to go yet. When he was about 2 years old and we'd had our second child, I found myself in a really tricky predicament, and I was actually in the neurologist's office myself because I was incredibly poorly. I was having terrible head pains that were lasting days and days, really debilitating. So not your typical migraine or headache, because I get those too, but something that I thought there was something seriously wrong with me. So I went to the neurologist's office myself to find out what was going on. And they did all of the tests and the scans and asked me all of the questions. And it turns out that actually it was the stress and the grief and the worry and the overwhelm of having a child with special needs and disabilities. And at the time, he was completely undiagnosed, so we didn't know why he had the difficulties that he had. So it was at that point, getting to complete rock bottom, that I decided something had to change and I needed to make a change for myself. All of us want to live long and fruitful and fun and fulfilled lives, but I'm sure you would agree with me that as a parent of a child with needs, many of us have worries that are going to last forever. If you're like me and our family situation, Freddie is going to need support for his whole life. He won't be able to live independently. He will always need an advocate. He will always need someone to be his voice and to take care of him. And one of my biggest fears is that I won't be around for long enough. So it became really, really important to me that I was well enough and happy enough that I would be able to last as long as possible, basically. So I've worked really hard over about the last 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years, to really get myself up and running. And after I hit rock bottom, I would say it took probably well over 12 months to get myself a bit more on an even keel. And I did that through a lot of things that I did myself, support of friends, my husband, family too. And once I had got myself to a point where I was feeling like I was coping and managing well, I just thought there's got to be tons and tons of other parents just like me out there who are also struggling, who could perhaps, we could come together as a community and work together on advocacy for our children, how to manage those situations without it having a negative impact on us, and then as a result, how to really work on emotional resilience. So that's where the workshops came and why I set up Aimee Man Mentoring, for that very reason. And so today's topic, as I mentioned, is all around emotional resilience and prioritising that self-care for us as people and as parents, because it's truly, truly important. Now you might be wondering, it's a bit of a buzzword, I hear it all the time, resilience, emotional resilience, but actually, really what is it? Really what it is, if you really break it down, the basics of it is just simply the ability to cope with stressful situations and crises. And as a human race, we are predisposed to having stressful situations and crises in our life. That's always going to happen. And some of us have more than others. Some of us have more than our fair share, for sure. But it is, as a human race, that's what's going to happen. So we should never really be surprised when something challenging happens, but often it can take us by surprise. Even if you know your child has a disability, it's the next time that you're told they might not be able to do something, the next time you get a new diagnosis, the next time you have to fight for a service, the next time you have to deal with the stares of a stranger. All of those things impact us. So the way I try to look at it is that it is the ebb and flow, because it's always there, but it's ebbing and flowing all of the time, and sometimes we're in a better place than others. So it's in the time when we're not feeling in such a good place and such a strong place that we need to have kind of like a set of tools, really, to work from. This isn't a magic wand, by the way, and it's not something that happens really quickly. It is work. It is work that we practice, a bit like if you have a faith or if you are into yoga or mindfulness. It's a practice, and you practice it every day. And I have found that I can cope much better. I can be more resilient when those things do crop up and the stresses occur. So there are 3 areas which I think it's really, really important to understand. First of all, they're the 3 Ps, actually, of resilience, the 3 Ps that people would talk about. And the first one is personalisation. I can never say that word. But personalisation, basically where you think it's actually your fault. So in the early days, I would have definitely did. I used to think that Freddie's disabilities were all my fault. He was undiagnosed, and so we didn't have a reason why his brain wasn't developing as it should do. And I just felt it must have been something that I did. It had to be. Even though, actually, I didn't drink any alcohol, I didn't smoke, we didn't, go out, I had lots of sleep, I took the right vitamins, I ate the right food. I did everything that I felt that I really could do, and yet still this had happened. So that's the first one, personalisation. The next one is pervasiveness. So that is that you feel that the ramifications of your child's disability is going to affect absolutely every area of your life. So work, home, money, friends, family, everything you can think of, you feel it's going to really infiltrate and impact absolutely everything. In some cases, for some periods of time, of course, that can be the case. But the other side of things is permanence. So feeling that it's going to last forever. And of course, like death and taxes, it is clear that if your child has a disability or additional needs of any kind, of course, that's not going to go away. They are always going to have that diagnosis. They are always going to have that challenge. But it's the things within it that aren't necessarily always the same. And that's the area to try and focus your mind on. So those are the 3 Ps of emotional resilience. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why it's important to understand them and have some self-reflection and thought about how that fits into your life. So I shared with you, with the personalisation, the thought that actually it's your fault. What I want to say to you is, categorically, even though I haven't met you, I can tell you now it's not your fault. Because unless you did something specifically, you made a specific choice to do something which you knew would cause your child to suffer, there is no way that it could be your fault. You might feel it's your fault that they don't have an EHCP yet, or that, they haven't got physio on board yet, or it's your fault that they need AFO splints and they don't have them because you didn't get onto it quick enough. There's a whole host of things, and honestly, parents, probably mums more so than dads, but parents on the whole have a lot of self-blame. We carry a lot of guilt with us about everything. So it wouldn't be unusual for you to feel the guilt that those things are your fault. We are trying our best. I can guarantee that everybody watching this video is absolutely trying their best with the skills that you have, the knowledge that you have, and the resources that you have to give the best possible outcome and situation for your child. Please, please, please do not think that any of these things are your fault. They're not. So, pervasiveness, feeling that your child's disability will infiltrate and impact absolutely everything. Sometimes, for a period of time, that can be the case. So, for example, I have a couple of friends who have very serious situations going on where their children are seriously ill and they have been in hospital for many, many, many months, ongoing. And so, yes, that does impact your life overall because you're not working, you're not out and about, you're not seeing friends, you're not doing the things that you would normally do. But there are other areas where it doesn't have to impact you in that way. So I absolutely used to think, oh my goodness, I am always going to be a carer. It's never going to be any different. He's always going to need that level of support. I'm never going to be able to do anything that I want to do. And those things all sound very selfish, but we are humans and we all have our own needs. And absolutely, that's where I was at the time. That's how I was feeling. But when I look back now on the last 9 years, I couldn't be more wrong, really. I never thought that I would start up a community of people, of parents just like me, who work really hard to gain new skills on advocacy and emotional resilience. I didn't ever see that in my future. And I've recently started working for a brilliant social enterprise called Trust Care Partnership. And in fact, Lynn Barton, who's our director, she was one of the BAPS nominees as well. So that's really exciting. And if it wasn't for Freddie and it wasn't for the situation that I find myself in, I wouldn't be recording this video for you today. So things do never, ever stay the same, not completely. And you can, things do ebb and they do flow and they do change. And that is the same for the whole thing of this is going to last forever. Nothing lasts forever in the same guise. It really doesn't. So having an inward look, what I would recommend is that you give yourself a little bit of time, get a piece of paper and a pen, write down the 3 Ps, personalisation, pervasiveness and permanence, and write underneath each one what those things mean to you. Because that overwhelming feeling of any of those 3 things can just bring you completely down. And it is overwhelming. If you think this is all my fault, it affects everything, and it is forever, it is going to be incredibly overwhelming. And you're not really going to be able to see clearly and think clearly about what you need to do to go forward and to step forward. When I do my workshops, that is an exercise that I get everybody to do. And it always feels quite horrible, I suppose, when people are doing it. But then we always have time to talk through it afterwards about what that means and why everybody feels like that. So definitely do take a little bit of time, write them down and go through those thoughts and feelings that you have and be really, really logical when you read them back to yourself. Is it my fault? Is it really my fault? Is there really nothing else that we can do or experience or change that would be different? And I can almost guarantee that you will find differences. So those are the 3 Ps. I think emotional resilience is a bit of a buzzword in a way, and people talk about toolboxes and armour to help you. And yes, that is true. But what I would say is that over my time of putting all of those things together, toolboxes that I use, so I'll share some of those with you in a moment, things that I do for myself, the crux of it actually is doing something for yourself, having time for you. And as I said, for some parents in some situations at some time, it's not possible and you have to put yourself on hold. Of course you do, because that's parenting and that's parenting of a child with special needs. But the thing that really, really helps us to cope is having time, our own space, and it's brain space actually that you need more than anything. So yes, it might be, for 5 odd years, I didn't read a book that wasn't to do with being neurodiverse or having autism or brain injury or neurology. I didn't read anything that wasn't to do with that. And to be honest, I quite like a bit of Jilly Cooper every now and then, or, Trashy Magazine. And I made the decision that for just 5 minutes a day before I passed out in bed asleep, I would do that for me. And it's not selfish, it's none of those things. We all have needs, and as parents, sometimes our needs are really high because we spend so much time and so much energy on other people. Is it having a bath? Is it going for a walk? Is it having exercise? To be honest, it's all of those things. And one of the big things that changed for me and helped me cope mentally, because my mental health was really, really suffering, was actually doing physical exercise. I don't think I'd done any exercise for about 15 years from a heart pumping kind of way. Walking the dog, yes, I've always done that. And that's always really helped. Getting that time outside in the fresh air, dedicated to me and my dog, has always helped. Obviously, we don't all have dogs, but if you do, walk them. But actually being able to exercise, get the blood pumping round, get space for myself, has been really, really important. I felt better about myself, about how I feel and about how I look. And those 2 things in themselves really, really help us to cope. I cannot recommend physical exercise enough. It doesn't matter if you've never done any. I mean, honestly, I started with couch to 5K. It was horrendous. And I had to run for the first 30 seconds. I thought, These are muscles I have literally never ever used in my entire life. It was a killer. But I'm so glad I did it. And it took me from the point of going to the neurologist and realising that I was seriously unwell and had to make a lot of very big changes. Like I said, it's not overnight. And actually, it probably took me 5 more years to start doing the physical exercise. So I started off with what I was eating, how often I was eating, sleep, trying to get at least one night's really good sleep. So an early night, early to bed once a week. And then I looked at time. What was I doing with my time? Was everything absolutely necessary? Did I need to spend as much time on Dr. Google as I was? Because that was a massive stress for me. Looking, searching all of the time. It's really trying to draw back on what's essential. What do you actually have to do in a day? And then the physical exercise came. But running alongside all of that was something really, really important. And that is mindset. When I talk about mindset, I never mean positive thinking. Yes, obviously, that's good. It's good to be a positive thinker. But that's not really what I mean by mindset. So mindset is more around, firstly, accepting the situation that we are in. If, like me, and I'm sure I've never met a parent of a child with special needs who hasn't been through a grieving process, because it's such a hard situation. You're grieving a living being, and it's not because you blame your child or because they shouldn't be who they are. But for me, I can talk from personal experience. It was a grieving process of grieving the child that I thought I would have, grieving the life that I thought we would have, grieving the life that I thought I would have, how I would work or I wouldn't work. I didn't work for many, many years until I started doing the mentoring within the community. And it's very, very hard to get your head around it. But having acceptance is really key. So accepting the situation, and that does take a really long time. And as I said, it's the ebb and the flow. So you might get another diagnosis, something new might happen, and then you have to revisit that grieving process again. But that's okay. And thinking about mindset around, what does it really mean? Is this really going to affect everything? How can I cope? What practical things can I do? Who can I call on for support? Because one of the biggest things is having a team around you. So we have team around the child, but this is team around you too. Is it friends? Is it your spouse? Is it your parents? Is it work colleagues? Is it the Samaritans? Is it a counsellor? Is it a social worker? It could be anybody at all, but having people around you to support you is really, really key so that you can talk things through. And my father died about 11 years ago now, and that was probably at the time it was absolutely the biggest shock, the biggest life-changing shock I have ever been through. And at that point I did have counselling, and what I can say is that I wholeheartedly believe that it helped me. I went for about a year, every other week for about a year, and it was incredible. I haven't actually ever had counselling for having a child with severe needs and disabilities, but I know that I should do, and that is on my list as part of my self-care, my ongoing practice of self-care and emotional resilience. That is actually on my list. So I have signed up. I'm on the list to have some counselling. We should all take advantage of all of the things that are available to us. So it is like a toolbox: counselling, good friends, fresh air, exercise, eating the right food. And when I say that, believe me, I eat quite a lot of chocolate, but it's thinking about it from a fuel perspective. How are you fueling your body? Now, I don't know about you, but when I am under serious situations of stress, we have some of it going on at the moment. Freddie had surgery a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, and he's been very, very poorly all the way through. So our stress levels are really high. And when I'm really stressed, I burn more calories because your body needs it. It's in fight or flight mode a lot of the time. So actually, if I only eat lots of junk, which is actually what I crave, I have a crash. So it's thinking about eating for fuel. It's obvious, isn't it? Fruit, veg, protein, carbohydrates, all of the things that you need, and doing the exercise. So this morning, I'd had a really bad night's sleep worrying about Freddie, and I woke up and it was about 6:15, and I thought, ugh, what am I going to do? And I can't tell you I did this every morning, because some mornings I'm so exhausted I can't even hardly open my eyes. But I got up and I did a PE with Joe Wicks, and I can tell you I felt so much better, so much better. It's really hard to get motivated when you are feeling overwhelmed, just completely on edge, at the depths of despair. It can be very hard to get motivated. So don't be hard on yourself. The way I started off with building my resilience was I wrote a big, massive list. In fact, I did it with a friend. She kind of did a bit of an intervention on me when she realised I was just crying all the time. Every time we spoke, every time we text, it was horrendous. So she came to my house and we went through all of the things that I could do to make changes. But it was on the agreement that I wasn't going to do it overnight. I wasn't going to change my eating habits overnight. I wasn't going to change my exercise or my self-care or the time that I had to myself or the worry or my mindset overnight. It really did take, it's ongoing, in fact. It is absolutely ongoing. But now, I do meditation too, and it might make you feel really silly if you haven't done any before, but you can start off really simply. And it gives you even just 5 minutes, even if you have to lock yourself in the toilet to go and do it and just sit calmly. You can use the Headspace app. I started off doing that, so I don't really need it anymore, but those sorts of things are really wonderful for helping you focus and concentrate on yourself and giving yourself that time. Being able to think through, so thinking logically, because a lot of the time we feel under attack and you're told things, you've got professionals that perhaps you haven't got a good relationship with. You feel they don't understand you or understand your child. Each time you go, each time you discuss something, whether it's friends or family, you feel under attack. But it's remembering that a lot of the time when that's happening to you, it's actually their problem. It's their lack of understanding, their lack of education, their lack of bedside manner that causes those situations. And it is a choice as to whether we allow that to long-term affect us. I'm not saying we're robots, because we're not. And I have somebody in my family who is very, very challenging, to say the least. And it takes a lot of resilience to cope with the onslaught and the attack that comes from that relationship. If it is somebody that you can walk away from, I would walk away from it. You can choose to surround yourself with people who are good for you, who are good for the soul, who make you feel uplifted, who support you and love you. For those friends that are faux friends or those relatives that you can maybe distance yourself from, do it. This is about self-care, which means supporting yourself and making sure that you are surrounded by love and care, because you have got to give so much having a child with a disability. So much energy, so much time, so much thought. Far more, and I can say that knowingly, as I have two neurotypical children, and it's different type of work, but the heartache isn't there. So that's one of the things that you're trying to reduce. It's protecting yourself. So thinking it through, write down the 3 Ps. Have a look about how you truly feel so that you can understand yourself and your own thought process. I think understanding ourselves as human beings takes a really long time. And when you're young, you do think you know it all. I certainly did. But going through these experiences, they do make us stronger. You feel crushed at the time. But looking back on the last 9 years of my life, I can honestly say I feel stronger. I know myself better. I know what I'm prepared to put up with. I know who I want to be friends with, which family members are good for me, which are not. How many friends should I have? Who lifts me up, who supports me, which professionals should we have? I'm not afraid to walk away from things. And having that mindset that you are important as well as your child, that you are valued, is really, really important. So write all of those things down. Have a look at them. Start writing down all of the things that you could change. Don't be overwhelmed by it, because you're not going to change it overnight. Is it food, exercise, friends, when the pandemic's over, going out, socialising, getting a dog, taking up a hobby, reading books, watching box sets, going to the cinema, getting a partner if you don't have one, or or working on the relationship that you do have, because under these times of stress, and I can say from experience, relationships suffer, and it is hard work to keep it going, but it's worth it in the end. Write down your list of what it is that you want to make changes, things that will help you. Is it getting help? One of the things for us was that I never wanted any external support really, but we did get to crisis point, and I had to take the step to apply to MASH for a disability social worker. I was petrified. And when they rang and they looked at the application and they said to me, Aimee, it's really clear that Freddie meets the threshold for the highest level of support. He's really complicated and has a lot of needs. And I knew it, but it's always gutting when you hear it, isn't it? But I knew it. And actually it was the best thing that we did. I know not everybody has the best experience with a social worker, but my experience has been positive, and so I want to tell you that because it can be positive. Don't be put off by doing it. And actually the support has really helped Freddie. It's helped have a positive impact on Freddie. He now has a brilliant PA who he loves, and that gives me time to be with the children, with the other two children, and do things with them that Freddie can't do. So going on big, long, muddy walks with the dog, Freddie can't handle that for sensory reasons, for physical reasons, and for emotional reasons. So it gives them the chance that I can fulfill some of the things that I think sometimes they miss out on. It gives me respite and gives me space to breathe. Don't be afraid to do those things. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to speak out. This is all about keeping our mental health in check so that our physical health doesn't suffer because of it. That's really, really important. So speak out. Ask questions, go to your doctor, go to the school, talk to the school, build those good relationships with them. Don't feel that everybody's against you, because they're really not. Majority of people out there want to help. They want to be part of your team and part of your child's team. And really start to care about yourself, because it's very, very easy as parents to put ourselves on the back burners. But I'm telling you from experience, you must not do that. You must care for yourself. And for me, what it looks like is exercise, dog walking, reading. I use my Tesco vouchers to get a subscription to a magazine, which I really like. I haven't bought magazines for ages. I know that sounds like something really silly, but I love it when it comes through the door. And if I can just get 5 minutes to myself to read the odd article, it takes me away from what's going on and the stresses. Something that takes me outside of myself. Making sure that, well, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, I was seeing friends whenever we could, even if it was just for a coffee or to walk together, whatever it might be, things that fill me up, things that feed me, so that I can be more relaxed and in a better situation to help Freddie with his whole plethora of needs. The most key important thing is sleep. And I know for a lot of us that's hard, because a lot of our kiddos don't sleep. But sleep is really key, even if it means that, I don't know, you're driving from one place to another, you have a kip in the car for 5 minutes. You've got to try and get the sleep, because you cannot function without it. Don't forget it's an ebb and a flow. It's coming and it's going all of the time. Don't be hard on yourself. It's not your fault. And there are ways to help you and help your child and help move things forward. Please don't blame yourself for these things. This is an unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in, being parents of kids with needs. I don't mean unprecedented from the point of view that obviously there's lots of parents throughout history who have had children with needs, but it's unprecedented for you when it's your first time. It's totally new. There is no guidebook. There is no nothing to tell you. This is how it's going to work. Every child is so totally unique, even if they have the same diagnosis as somebody else. Everybody's family situation is unique. Don't be hard on yourself. You are doing your absolute best, and of that I am sure. We all need help, and it's okay to ask for it. Take your time, little bit at a time, and start to turn things around. So the workshops that I do for parents of kids with needs, just like me, where we talk about emotional resilience, we would always have conversations around what that means for those individuals and to talk through. So if you have any questions at all, you want to just offload, or you wanted to ask a specific question about how something works, you're very welcome to email me. And it is Aimee Man Mentoring, so I'm going to spell it AIMEEMANN mentoring @gmail.com. I'd be very happy to hear from you, and I'd love to respond to you and to connect with you and for you to be part of that community too. So I hope some of that information has been useful, and hopefully I'll see you again for another video. Take care.